All right, let's finish up the Blade trilogy with Blade Trinity. Now, this is a film that is pretty much universally panned. I don't know almost anybody that likes this film, even people who absolutely love the first two, which is mostly everybody. Like, I don't think I've ever met a person that was like, loved Blade 1, hated Blade 2. Like, usually if you like Blade 1, you like Blade 2. But usually when you like Blade 1 and 2, you hate 3. That's typical. So, I went into this not trying to like it, because I don't try to do that, but wanting to. I want to be the person who sees the movie, for what it is, and gives it a fair shake and whatever. And so I watched this, and yeah, that didn't happen. Um, Here's the issue with this film. So I was trying to figure out what the issue was with the film, because when I was watching it, I was like, well, Blade feels very similar to the other two movies. Like, Wesley Snipes' Blade is very much Blade. The action sequences are actually all pretty good. Like the fight sequences, the big battles, all that. They're mostly pretty good. So I was like, all right, this is working. This is working. Like, why isn't this movie working? What's so off about this film? Okay, so what I guess I've pinned down in my own summation of this. The film, because this was directed by David Esquire, the writer, who I don't know how much he's directed, like, before this or after this, but I'm going to assume not much. The film is very concerned with being cool and sexy. Now, the other two films are able to pull that off without making it feel like they're trying too hard to pull it off. Now, the issue I have with the other films is that the villains, for the most part, are all trying too hard. Like, it's just all over. Then that's the only thing I don't really care for in the first two films. It's all exaggerated characters that are like, giving these bombastic performances, really acting above and beyond what they need to. I feel like that's what happens to the style of this film. That it's trying way too hard to emulate the coolness and the sexiness of the original. And it feels the most dated of the three films. Yes, there's CGI issues that date all of them, but this one feels the most 90s of them all. Like, the way that the sequences are shot, all the attention to, like, the curves of someone's body and the coolness of this character and all this, it's like overtly sexualized, or this like attempt to be cool, but like trying so hard it's obvious, and you're just sitting there like, oh fuck, man, is this a music video? Like, like all the scenes with Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel and all these introductions of these characters. Ryan Reynolds looks like a total fucking douchebag in this movie. It's pretty funny. But I was watching this, like, I was like, what is wrong with this movie? And like every time a character would come on screen, that was this new character, the Hannibal King character, or the Whistler's daughter, or whatever. There was just so much like slow motion and like panning on different parts of their bodies, and I was like, oh god, stop with this shit. It's like the sequences in the Schumacher Batmans when like the characters are, you got the glistening parts of their bodies and the badass and the bat nipples and all. It's like, what are you doing? What purpose does this serve? Another issue with this film is that characters are pretty much pointless. Like, you've got Natasha Lyonne's character, you got Patton Oswalt's characters. What really do they bring to this movie? What purpose do they serve? Other than kind of exposition dumps. Like there's nothing to them, so there's like no weight to them when their characters perish. And they kind of die kind of out of nowhere, which could be fine, like shocking deaths and whatnot. But it's the way it's done, it's the way it's handled, that you're just like, oh, they're dead. It's not shocking, because here's the thing. You have to make us give a shit about the characters for it to be shocking. Okay? We're not shocked when a character we don't know anything about dies out of nowhere. It's like, oh, that character? Well, who are they again? What do they do again? Oh, yeah, that character. Oh, okay. Well, that sucks. Like, I wish I would have got more from that character. The only reason it sucks is because I'm like, that character hasn't been developed yet. So I wish I would have got to see it, because I know these actors, and I know that they could have brought something more to those characters, and they just didn't. And then my third reason for why this movie doesn't work, and maybe my biggest reason, is Dracula himself. Okay? The whole Dracula character is just terrible to me. Like, this was a perfect opportunity. Blade versus Dracula. This is a fantastic setup here, right? You've got one of the most famous vampire hunters versus the most famous vampire. So this is a match made in heaven. This is the Jason versus Freddy. This is the Godzilla versus King Kong. This is what you want to see, right? This is what people would be like, oh, this is what gets them in the theaters. Blade versus Dracula? Holy hell. Yeah, except for Dracula is absolutely dreadful in this film. And I don't dislike the guy who they cast as Dracula, typically. Like, he's in Prison Break, and he's in, the CW, DC Universe, Legends of Tomorrow, Flash shows, whatever. He's fine there, okay? And there's plenty of places where I've seen him where he's fine. But here, no. And it's everything about the character. It's so bland. It's so generic. There's nothing interesting about it at all. He walks into a vampire shop and just is looking at them like they're posers. And it's supposed to be like a nod to the audience, like, oh my God, look at all these posers. Look at these kinds of people. Like, what if Dracula walked into their store? And it's like he just grabs one and bites him by the throat and knocks another guy out the window. Like, there's nothing interesting about it. There's nothing interesting about his character. His performance is awful. Like, the Dracula character in this is so poor. And it's like, that's the main event, right? And then getting to the main event, Dracula versus Blade. Is the fight interesting? Is the fight memorable? Does anything happen? Does Dracula get the edge on him that's like, oh shit, this is the end of Blade? No. The fight sequence between Blade and Dracula in this is lame as fuck. And here's another thing. So, Dracula is supposed to be the most formidable foe that Blade has ever seen. But our first introduction to Dracula in this movie, from Blade, to Blade, is Dracula running like a bitch from Blade, and then grabbing a child to protect him from Blade. Now, this is supposed to make him menacing because he would kill a child, right? But that's not how the viewer sees it. The viewer sees it as Dracula sees Blade and hightails it out of there, and then grabs a little kid to use as protection. This is a pussy move. This is characters that they put in movies that are seen as cowards. Our first introduction to Dracula. Okay, here's a perfect example. This is how you set up a main villain. A villain that has never been seen before in a franchise. You have these characters that have fought, plenty of foes in the past who seem like the big deal, right? Stephen Dorff's character, the big vampire dude with the fucking, those guys had their moments, but Dracula's supposed to fucking surmount them all. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. He's the most scary villain by far, right? It's not. They decide to have him run for his life and then use a child. Now, here, as I was trying to get to, here's the perfect example of how to introduce a villain into a franchise that is already stocked full of villains that you have to supersede and make this villain the most dominant by far. So, in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos comes in, and Thanos has been being teased for a little while, but Dracula has all this lore behind him, so you don't even really need to introduce Dracula in any way that people aren't going to be like, oh my god, this is Dracula, it's Dracula, we all know who Dracula is. So, the Avengers film still had an even higher fucking hill to climb across, or to the top of, because, not really many people knew who the fuck Thanos was. But let me tell you, by the end of that opening sequence, you knew who the fuck Thanos was. He was a force to be reckoned with. And the way that they did this was they took a character that usually could not be beaten, the Hulk, and Thanos beat the fuck out of him so bad that Bruce Banner could not get the Hulk to come out for the rest of the film. He was terrified. The Hulk was terrified of the beating he received from Thanos. He was beaten so badly. He was pulverized so much that fucking the Hulk... We're watching the Hulk get smashed. Like, just brutally beaten. Which we've never seen before in the past. Nothing like it ever. Imagine if they did that here. Imagine if Dracula, in his first interaction with Blade, beat him near to death. I mean, fucked him up. Took people around him he loved and fucking murdered them in front of him. And Blade couldn't do shit because he was so broken and beaten. Imagine the difference of how this character would be perceived through the rest of the film. But no, instead, he grabs a kid and runs. And he goes into a vampire shop and beats up a couple humans. Like, what are he really shows no strength in this film. Like, yeah, vampires fear him because that's what's in the script. But what do we see that makes him a scary fucking presence? The monster in the second one is 1,000 times more intimidating than this. The way the monster presented in the second film is way more obviously scary, and this villain that can't be trifled with, because he comes in and all the vampires are running for their lives and he's fucking them up left, right, and center. But in this movie, how does Dracula prove that he's scary? They show that he's been locked in a room and given 5 victims to feed on. And then Parker Posey's character goes in there and he's like killing somebody. Like a vampire. And she's like, oh my god, that's scary. That's what you do. Like, he's just doing a normal vampire thing. That all of you do. Like, shouldn't you be scared of all of each other then? If that's what's scary to you? Like, that sequence made no fucking sense to me. I was just like, okay. He got like 5 random chicks. And he killed them and ate them. Like, ate their blood, or drank their blood. Okay. Like, all of you do that. So what's the fucking problem? Why are they so scared of him in that moment? Like, the way he's presented in the opening, when he's all demoned out and he looks crazy and he comes out and he has that, that armor on and everything. That's awesome. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Make him look like that for the whole fucking film. And make him just go through town ripping people apart. Literally just taking fucking heads, tearing them from their bodies, putting the bodies up and just sucking the fucking blood from the neck, like where there's no head. Just fucking taking children and just tearing them in half and like drinking blood out. Make this guy something we've never seen before. A fucking like tornado of death and destruction. But that's not how he's presented at all. There's nothing scary about him. And then we get I haven't looked at my notes once. I don't even really care, honestly. But like, and Ryan Reynolds has some comedic moments. So like, he's not completely wasted here, and you get some shirtless shots of him and whatever. So you got that for the people who are excited about that. So, but that's just it. It's like it's all surface level nonsense. It's like a couple cute jokes, some sexy bodies. Yeah, Jessica Biel looks fucking great. Sure, okay, fine. But we're not invested in anything in this movie. Nothing. I was so checked out that I was like, I was completely confused at what the fuck was happening in the ending of this movie. Because Natasha Lyonne's character essentially is like, oh, Dracula's blood is the fucking, the end game. Like, if you can get this in there, then all the vampires in a certain vicinity will die. And he's like, all right. And he goes and he does it and he sticks it, and Whistler's daughter helps him and whatever, and they stick it in his body, and then he dies, and then some vampires in the area die. And then Blade's like, all right, my work isn't done, and then he just goes right back out to work. And it's like, Blade kills more vampires on any given night than this, like, end-all, be-all thing that you gave Blade to stick into a guy. I mean, Blade says in this movie that he's killed, like, 1,182 familiars, not just vampires. So human beings. And that's another thing in this movie. So he kills 100, he says it himself. I've killed 1,182 human beings. But the opening of this movie is the vampires setting him up to kill a human. And then they're like, oh, we set you up. Ha, you killed a person, not a vampire. And he's like, oh, shit. And the cops are after him. The FBI is getting sent in on him, whatever. And then 5 minutes later in the movie, Blade says, I've killed 1,182 people. So where were the cops and the FBI then? Why'd they need to set him up if he's killing fucking people? You'd have to kill one person a day for 3 straight years to get those kinds of numbers. So all of a sudden him killing one guy on the streets because they called the cops to view, like, to see it? But does that ever even really become that big of a thing in the film? Like, he's captured by the cops, and most of the cops are just familiars. And then people just come and break him out, and that's that. There's not really much more to it. It's very simple. But it's like the whole opening of the film, and like, we got you. But it's a bunch of familiars that got him. So it's not even really the cops. So this is what I'm saying. Like, everything in this movie is just so fucking uneventful and lame. It's like all these setups for nothing. Like, even just the idea of the film is a setup that leads to nothing. Dracula versus Blade. Like, holy shit. That's what I want to see. No, you don't. No, you don't, because I've seen it. I've seen it. And you don't want to see it. Yeah, I have a bunch of I have a bunch of notes here. I don't really know if I feel like going through them. You got Triple H in here, which is, he's got silver-plated teeth. Is that what I saw? So, like, if he bites his lip, he'll die? I don't know. Look what it looked like. Like, he's trying to be hard. Like, look, dude, I got silver in my mouth. I chrome-plated my teeth. And it's like, you ever been eating fucking food and you accidentally bite your lip? That's what's gonna happen to him, and he's gonna die. And yeah, I mean, they say how Dracula's born perfect, right? He's like, just I keep harping on this, but what does Dracula really, honestly, for people who like this movie, don't like this movie, seen it a lot, whatever, what about Dracula in this film proves to us that he's a stronger and scarier vampire than anything that we've encountered in the 2 previous films? What separates him from Steven Dorff's, like, light god character that he's at the end, or even fucking throughout the movie as the normal Steven Dorff character? What makes this Dracula character scarier than the main villain dude in the second movie? Please, enlighten me. Because sequels always have this thing that they try to do. They always try to outdo the last movie, right? They got to be bigger and better. And that's why sequels sometimes can get ridiculous and not really work. And then a sequel will come along later in the franchise and it'll go back to the roots and people will get excited because it's like, oh my God, like they went so above and beyond. But some directors, people, they always want to come in and are like, all right, well, they've seen this before. We've got to amp it. We got to turn the dial up to 11. This sequel has to outdo the original in every way. This film looks on the surface like it's trying to do that. But where does it succeed? Where in the film does it succeed? And then, yeah, I mean, Blade's counterparts in this movie, there are no whistlers, there are no scuds, there's no nothing. It's just all throwaway characters. I couldn't give a fuck about Whistler's daughter, you know, like anything. Like they try to set up these moments. And then all these new gadgets. As I said, it's trying to be, it's the style. It's all style over substance in this. And the style doesn't work. So, you want to make a Blade versus Dracula film, which, hey, maybe Disney will with the MCU. Now, of course, they're not going to be able to go all graphic. This film could have. As I said, you could have fucking taken kids and ripped them apart. You could have had this guy be terrifying to beat the fuck out of Blade so much that Blade's like, you know, broken. Something we've never seen from Blade before. Blade's never even showed an emotion that isn't like faked. Like where he does his fake smiles and shit. Imagine if Dracula fucked Blade up so bad, killed everyone he knew, that he didn't even know if he cared anymore. That he didn't know if he could go out and face this fucking vampire. Something. Give us something we haven't seen before. Make this villain memorable. What's memorable about this villain? The outfit he wears with the fucking chest exposed all the way down to his belly button. Like, that's one hell of a V-neck. Anyway. Alright, so, yeah, I'm not looking through my notes. It's a pretty stupid movie. Yeah. I even love looking down. That blood farming scene's kind of cool. When they have all the people up there in, like, the Matrix, and they're, like, harvesting blood from them for hour. That should have been an emotional scene. They even have vampire dogs in here, which is really dumb. Really silly looking. You got, like, a Pomeranian as a vampire. It sets up a couple cute little jokes for Ryan Reynolds. But it's like, they make the fuck you joke twice. So they have the baby that says fuck you, and then they have the Hannibal, hello, my name is fuck you. And I like how Blade kind of calls that stuff out, and he's like, what is that, a joke? Is this a fucking joke to you? What do you think, we're joking around here? I'm like, yes, all right. So Wesley Snipes is great here. I think Wesley Snipes' Blade, the titular character, lands. I think all the Blade stuff in this film works great because Wesley Snipes brings exactly what he brings. And this is why I think that I was kind of confused throughout because I'm like, Blade's kind of kicking ass. Like, Blade's awesome in this. Like he is in the other two films. So this is of no fault to Wesley Snipes at all. Zero fault. He brings everything he brings in the first two movies. The fight sequences are cool, except for the one against Dracula, which is totally fucking lame. But like all the fight sequences and everything, it's good stuff, right? So that all works. Nothing else does. So Blade's good. Fucking throw out all the rest. But those are my feelings on it. Keith, Santa of the Sea, that's your Blade trilogy review. Now, I started watching the Blade series last night. The first episode is two episodes mashed together make a film. So far, it's okay. The funny thing about that is that the exact opposite of that is true for me in that show. I think everything in the show is pretty good except for Blade. This Sticky Fingers guy as Blade is not good. He's just not a good Blade, and that's the problem with the show. Like, it's hard to watch a Blade show where Blade isn't good. Like, everything else, I'm like, all right, this kind of works. I'm telling, holy shit, I was watching this, because that show's created by David S. Goyer, who wrote all three of the other films. If Wesley Snipes reprised his role as Blade in the TV series, it'd actually be pretty kick-ass. I'd be like, oh shit, because it's got gore, and it's got tits, and it's got cussing. Like, it's an R-rated show. So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And yeah, it's TV budget, so it's not the production value of the first one of the movies, but it's the problem with the show's Blade. Maybe it'll grow on me. I'm not gonna review every episode one by one. I'll eventually watch all 12 episodes. Technically 13, I guess. I don't know, but we'll call it 12. And then just kind of do a recap at the end. I don't know how long that's going to take. It might be a little while, but for now, we got the films in, so there you go. So there you go. Anyway, this fucking movie. Yeah, I know why people don't like it. Damn. I really tried, though. I really did. All right, adios.